du pays, il y a énormément de populations déplacées. Donc après tant de décennies de conflits dans un état fragile mais qui peine finalement à sortir de ces décennies difficiles, comment peut-il arriver vers une démocratie ou en tout cas une construction de la paix? Donc c'est avec des panélistes assez prestigieux que nous allons recevoir tout bientôt ici sur scène. Nous avons Monsieur Forest Whitaker qui est donc acteur, réalisateur bien connu internationalement, qui est également président et fondateur de la Whitaker Fondation pour la paix au Soudan du Sud, qui va venir nous parler de qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire au niveau de la paix au Soudan du Sud, et également une jeune activiste qui s'appelle Magdalena Nandej Lokoro, qui est également sage-femme et qui œuvre en fait finalement pour que les femmes, que les jeunes soient reconnus et que en fait, leur voix surtout soit entendue pour parler de la paix, de qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire au Soudan du Sud aujourd'hui en 2019 et comment pouvoir finalement arriver à un vivre ensemble et à un bien-être dans un des pays les plus malheureusement les plus pauvres au monde. Donc on va avoir bientôt la séance qui va commencer et on se réjouit que vous soyez là avec nous pour visionner cela. Alors pour tous ceux qui nous rejoignent, alors de nouveau bienvenue au live stream du FIFDH avec un panel sur le Soudan du Sud. Monsieur Forest Whitaker va prendre la parole dans quelques instants. On va d'abord avoir une petite introduction par les personnes du festival. Ensuite un petit film de présentation de la Fondation Whitaker qui va durer quelques minutes. Et ensuite de ça, on va avoir un panel donc modéré par Monsieur Scott Weber de Interpeace qui va aussi nous dresser un peu un portrait de l'histoire du Sud-Soudan et des enjeux humanitaires pendant quelques dizaines de minutes. Et ensuite, on va avoir le panel, donc une discussion avec Monsieur Forest Whitaker et Madame Magdalena Nandej Lokoro qui vont aborder les enjeux de la paix et de la construction de la paix dans un État quand même qui a subi énormément de violences au cours des dernières années. Donc c'est vrai qu'on peut parler de 2011. Donc 2011, c'était le début de ces nouveaux États, mais avant ça, il y avait quand même beaucoup de conflits, notamment avec le Soudan du Nord et Khartoum. Ça a duré jusqu'en 2004 où il y a eu un accord de paix où le Soudan du Sud a pu avoir une autonomie régionale et ensuite en 2011 il est devenu le plus jeune État du monde. Donc à partir de ça, qu'est-ce qu'on peut en faire? Comment en fait retrouver des processus démocratiques qui englobent la totalité de la population? Quels soient les jeunes, quelles soient les personnes âgées, quelles soient toutes les ethnies, etc. Comment en fait arriver à ça pour construire finalement un État? Donc c'est surtout ces questions-là qu'on va aborder aujourd'hui avec Interpeace qui est donc un partenaire, une organisation partenaire du FIFDH qui travaille beaucoup sur ces enjeux-là de paix, de réconciliation et de comment construire dans un pays fissuré, souvent qui a subi énormément de conflits, souvent de conflits internes, des déplacements de population, etc. Comment, au-delà finalement de ces constats un peu difficiles, comment est-ce qu'on peut sur ces racines-là essayer de créer quelque chose, de construire quelque chose d'un peu plus durable. Donc voilà, on se réjouit en tout cas d'accueillir ce panel ici avec, comme je l'ai dit, je réannonce un peu nos invités. Donc Monsieur Forest Whitaker, acteur, réalisateur évidemment, et surtout président et fondateur de la Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative qui travaille énormément au Soudan du Sud, donc avec beaucoup de jeunes gens pour essayer de renouer un dialogue, construire une paix, construire un vivre ensemble. Et avec aussi donc une activiste, Madame Magdalena Nandej Lokoro, qui elle donc vient du Soudan du Sud et travaille tous les jours pour réinstaurer un dialogue, pour réinstaurer un vivre ensemble et une façon de pouvoir en fait tous ensemble créer quelque chose, construire une paix, construire une démocratie. Donc voilà, ça va être le panel, nos deux personnes qui vont venir intervenir dans cet après-midi au FIFDH. Et tout ça sera donc modéré par Monsieur Scott Weber, qui est le président de Interpeace, qui est une organisation partenaire du FIFDH qui travaille pour la paix, comment promouvoir la paix, comment pouvoir promouvoir la réconciliation dans des sociétés souvent fragilisées, etc., par des décennies de conflits sociaux, conflits politiques. Voilà, donc c'est un petit peu des enjeux difficiles parce qu'au final, quand on parle d'une société qui se retrouve dans une situation extrêmement dure après des décennies de conflits, des décennies de guerre, peut-être des fois parler de paix, ça peut paraître parfois un peu un peu abstrait, mais au final c'est là aussi où on se rend compte, et ça fait partie des droits humains, c'est comment essayer de penser le futur, comment essayer de repenser un vivre ensemble, et c'est extrêmement ça qui est important. Donc voilà, on se réjouit vraiment d'avoir cette discussion-là, et je vais donc laisser la parole aux panélistes sur scène, donc introduits par Madame Caroline Aboussada avec quelques introductions, puis le panel, comme on vous a prévu. Bonne séance, bon visionnement. Merci.
Bonjour à tous. Merci et bienvenue. Merci d'être là.
Good day to all of you, and thank you for being here. It is a great pleasure to welcome you. My name is Carolina Aboussada. I'm editor for the festival, and today it's a great pleasure to talk about peace building in South Sudan. Let me first of all call on the stage Maria Alonso, who is head of the Solidarity Services for the Geneva Canton. I would also like to pay tribute to Interpeace, who is co-organizer of this event. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much to the organizers for thinking about South Sudan. South Sudan is a crisis that is not enough talked about in the media. As of its independence since 1956, Sudan has been in conflict between Muslims, Christian, North, South, military, paramilitary. And in 2001, when they had self-determination, people thought peace was finally coming to the region. But it was all the hopes were shattered. And now, since last autumn, once again, there is little hope that things are finally going to change. Some people are working on the ground to try and build peace and reconciliation in South Sudan. So the Geneva Canton is highly aware of the situation. We support different Swiss NGOs working in the field, UNIFES, the Red Cross, Terre des Hommes, and other smaller organizations that do magnificent work in Juba, especially working with young people. And each year, hundreds of young boys and girls are trained in different fields and get a diploma. They then have hope to find work and have a normal life, like you and I, basically. Let me add one last thing. I want to share with you a personal memory. 30 years ago, this very day, I was actually taking a flight to North Uganda. For 7 months, I worked with UNIFED in a refugee camp with Sudanese people. The situation was dire, terrible. There were epidemics, malnutrition. But nowadays, when you see the images of South Sudan, one keeps wondering, what have we been doing over these 30 last years? I can't believe it. This needs to stop. We need to help people there on the ground, and some people are indeed fighting for that on the ground so that these people can finally get a proper life. Thank you very much for your attention.
Juste pour vous expliquer comment ça va se passer, là on va avoir la présentation.
Let me explain what is going to happen now. First of all, we're going to show you the work done by the Whitaker Foundation, then Scott Weber will present the 2 speakers.
Je vous souhaite un très très beau moment.
I wish you a very good time. Thank you.
South Sudan will officially become a sovereign nation July 9th, but with the excitement comes the challenge of rebuilding the country's institutions and infrastructure.
The president of Salva Kiir accused the vice president, Bashar al-Assad, of an attempted coup. Violence is raging in the world's newest country. Hundreds are feared dead in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. Many have fled the city, others are hunkering down, trying to stay safe.
South Sudan
سنة 2013 كما في كذا أجر وكم صار دقيق يتمدي موا يعني يجي جن ولا يبغى كم واحد ما جاء dari iya kami dia tinjau.
Violence is raging in the world's newest country. Hundreds are feared dead in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. Many have fled the city, others are hunkering down, trying to stay safe.
Especially in Quran, Tara Pai Bawan. Kasan al-Pain, Kamsar al-Bawan. Kakurke. ونهدام والي تودل كاسن 2013 كما حل لكن حل بالصبر يعني حل يجيب ولا يبغى كما جاي لنا مين الناس يجي يا توجهنا لكن ليش بجد وين كلام
سليمة الجنوبين ودبلتين ما في بلد تاني فوتو بلدك وكان كل جرى من بلد فايدة هنا ما في لأنه هنا جين زي حيوان
النسوان كمان لسه سكيرين شغالين معهم وده كمان فرصة لنا بيقول لنا سنين جيجين ما إذا كنا نشارك كنا نسوي حاجات ده كان تعلموا سويا يسدو the saving شكل هذا ما قصادو دو حاجات تجي لنا ما قصادو سيدي
طبعا نجينا هنا عشان برنامج السلام
هنا دارو كده هنا ما هنا زي شباب ده أنا ذات واحد
ما أبزور باسل
حاجة سنبامو يلا تنادى عنده لسه حاجة وبقدر بعمله لكن ما في مساعدة
حاجة سيبوانا هذا الشغل على سنة ده اشتغل ده سنة نساعد جماعتي هذا الجيني دكتور الجساد المسؤول والجساد نساعد
The influx of the new IDPs are not having any space, and they will ask us if we can give how the football field for more tents to be erected.
أريد أقول إنه الميدان الموجود عندنا هنا هو مستقبل الثاني للجيل الموجود في داخل يونس. لو في أي ناس مثل زيادة زي يمكن الناس زيادة دلوقتي الناس دي قاعدين حتى في شوارع.
عندنا مشاكل بجروب ملكية.
يعني معناته في ناس ذاته ماتوا.
هاي تو ما في تعاقدات على عقودهم. تعاقد بانكا، بكاسا. لا المهم انتوا لو بتقدر تحلوا لو ما بتقدر تحلوا خلونا بنحلوا برا.
Erun cara jepar wiyen no bata ngar mo bangar ngar mo chale je National Unity Day trophy kangar ka tim batio mo di so ngar en jog yen ke ka final ke ke tim wo ga ti ti o sit la ngar ko long mai ngar no mo.
Mambara galo mangerudu.
Ana mar, ana den kafzat. Kalau la den du haja tar kabu, kan kalau mau gesekra. Kung sa tamaru kan tayo mo. Kana tayo buto ala. Say mo na udah kata-kata na.
مرحبا بكم في استاد جوبا نلتقي بكم في هذا الأمسية راية ليوم الوحدة الوطنية ولكن سيبقى القيمة الكروية أكبر في هذا المباراة. إذن سأبدأ مباشرة بتشكيلة الفريق الوطني.
شكرا لك أسألك عن حضر معنا هنا.
سأدر استمر بحساسية دي واللي كان بيجيني بالسلام وكان جافي في حاجة الحسن.
كان قال الناس أنا داير تاني الكلام لابد في ذلك البطولة.
أنا بقول لك هون فرصة.
بين الفريقين بالتعادل والإيجابي. شكرا لحارس بانتي ولهذا الامر الرائع فرناند.
خلاص شكرا لك هنا.
شكرا تقول سيدي.
Dia hajar habis program sana dia in bright future dia student mana berjarak lalu dia malah beli football ini dia struggle the peace day asan kedina build the best.
gora di quei mon man de pelmen ko de ran wa mi iran de don da de beta su de gar lo wo de ke de keme le reke arme as ni de gar wo
بس أنا يعني شايفة نفسي يعني زي زول على عنده حاجة كبير في راس ما بيقدر بينتهي جنوب السودان ده لسه عنده قدام بتاعه لسه يعني مفتوح كده.
South Sudan will officially become a sovereign nation July 9th, but with the excitement comes the challenge of rebuilding the country's institutions and infrastructure.
بس أنا يعني بشوف نفسي يعني زي زول على عنده حاجة كبير في راس ما بيقدر بينتهي جنوب السودان ده لسه عنده يعني قدام بتاعه لسه يعني مفتوح كده.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Weber. I'm the president of Interpeace, the International Organization for Peace Building. Interpeace works in over 20 conflict zones around the world to support peace processes led by local people. Because one of the things that we've learned over the last 25 years is that for peace to be sustainable, the people of that society need to own the solutions. And that at the heart of building peace is the challenge of building trust. South Sudan is the world's youngest country, and since its independence in 2011, it has known almost only conflict. Young people, like you saw in this film, make up over 70% of the population, but they are generally marginalized. They are not included in decision-making in their communities, at the national level, and they are made to feel like often they don't belong. We know that in most countries around the world today, youth are seen as part of the problem, as a problem to solve, as a potential threat, instead of seeing them as the country's greatest asset, as change makers, and frankly, as stakeholders in that society. The UN just completed a major study consulting young people all around the world, and one of the overwhelming messages from young people was their statement, "Nothing about us without us." They want to participate, they want to be heard, and they want to have a voice in decision-making. Yesterday, we celebrated International Women's Day and took note of the limited but important progress that's been made against the women's inclusion movement. The youth inclusion agenda is, I would say, where the women's inclusion agenda was 20 years ago. We have a lot of work to do, and we got to get started now on this. One of the things is when you read the newspaper, you open the newspaper in any country, including here, you generally read stories about violence or the awful things that human beings are able to do to each other. We rarely have stories of resilience, stories that inspire, stories that tell us about the courage that people are exhibiting in overcoming the challenges in their own societies, the choices that they make to not take the easy route, but to do something for others. And that's why I'm so happy today to have a chance to facilitate this session with two amazing individuals. You saw one of them in the video, Magdalena Nandenge Lokoro of South Sudan, and the amazing work that she is doing, the courageous work that she is doing in such a conflict-affected country amongst her people to try to bring peace. The other person is someone who's known to all of you, an acclaimed actor, humanitarian, and the founder of the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, Mr. Forrest Whitaker. If you can Join me in welcoming them both on stage now. Thank you. Thank you both for being here. You know, the courage that we saw Magdalena exhibit in being a peacemaker in South Sudan, in her communities, it takes amazing courage. It also takes amazing courage to be here today in front of all of you. And I want to thank Magdalena for your courage in doing so. So maybe, Magdalena, we can start with you. You're here in Geneva on the international stage, talking to people who are concerned with many parts of the world, including South Sudan. And I want to know, what do you want to tell them about your situation and about the importance of building peace?
Once again, thank you very much. My name is Nandege Magdalena. I'm sorry, I was quite emotional of the video that I've seen, because that's what is happening in the country. I've now 2 days all today here, and when I'm to compare with Geneva, there's a great difference. I'm a registered midwife. I have a diploma in that. And I joined the organization in 2014. We were trained, and I am a peacemaker. I'm representing my country, South Sudan, and I'm representing the rest of my colleagues who are out there in conflict zone areas. That is why I was so emotional, and I'm sorry. Why I'm here in Geneva today is that I'm like one of the examples of what we are doing in the community. With high risks, but we endure the conditions because we want to make South Sudan a better place for tomorrow. I think sometimes I ask myself, why do I have to go to such kind of very risky areas, and what does it take me to do? It takes a lot of time to speak with people who are violent, the youth who cannot understand, but sometimes I try to ask them why they are in such kind of situations, and they tell me a lot of stories. So it is sometimes good to ask questions, to know what is happening and why it is happening, and why is that, where is that taking place exactly. In South Sudan, as you saw the video, those are boys, young boys who have put themselves in groups. Others have finished high schools, others are orphans, others have joined their peers just because they've chosen the negative part of the world because they don't know what to do. They feel they don't have a hope in their lives. I think the only difference in the world is that we have different colors, but we have the same blood. And it's so touching to be in such kind of a country. I don't wish that. I believe some of you, when you go to South Sudan, you start asking yourself a lot of questions about security, about feeding, about a lot of questions. So such kind of people survive in such kind of areas. So with WPDI, I'm so encouraged to be part of the organization, part of the youth. It's covering the whole of Equatorial region of the part of the country. It is in Western Equatoria, Central Equatoria, and Eastern Equatoria. When we joined this program, I was trained in ICT, conflict resolution, business skill, and these are the same programs that we train others in, and we get involved to know more about the community. Me, myself, I was not even moving, but because of Waiteka Peace and Development Initiative, we are able to train 159 youth in peace building, conflict resolution, ICT, and business skills. So all the counties in Eastern Equatoria are doing the projects, and they're trained in computer. At least they're enlightened to know the information that is taking place in the world. And as the government have signed the revitalized peace agreement last year in November, I think it is time to call for action for help, especially as a young country, as the youth are there. If the international community, the implementing partners in any other field, engineering, medical field, education, technology, these are the kind of services other youth need like you. And if there is any funding, please don't forget to look forward to see on how to support such kind of areas in South Sudan. I believe with that, there will be peace, there will be development in the country. As you know that the conflict started, South Sudan got its independence in 2011. They got referendum in 2010. And they ended up in conflict in 2013 up to date, just because of maybe power. But they always say that when the two elephants are fighting, the grass suffers, meaning that the most affected people are at the grassroots because the services do not reach them. We have lack of electricity, good education, water. We have a lack of good health, and the most affected people especially are women. Why I say women, because gender-based violence, they are the most affected people in the world. Sexual violence is one of it, whereby perpetrators sometimes even are not taken to court. The victim does not get her right. You find they have problems with the health facilities. So we don't know how many cases of maternal death are there, neonatal death, because with communication system, other people are very illiterate about it, and the communication system does not reach every area. We have some remote areas where you really see there's no church, there's no school, there's no health facility. And sometimes you ask yourself, how do these people live? And they're human beings. So I think that's all I can say. And if there is a way forward, I think we shall have more discussion of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you. Forrest, can you tell us a little bit about how the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative identifies such amazing individuals like Magdalena and Michael that we heard in the film? How do you go about identifying them with the communities?
When we start the program, we go to a community and we first introduce ourselves to the local leaders, to the elders, to the people of influence, to the communication individuals, and those people become somewhat of a council that will help us choose the youths. Like they see potential in Magdalena, and they tell us the potentiality that they see, and then we go about meeting them, and then we choose them from that group. Once they've been chosen, our programs are at least 5 years because it takes time to work through the program. But they get a year of training in the things that Magdalena was discussing about conflict resolution, ICT, life skills, and business. And once they've completed that in the year, they go back to their communities, because everything evolves around our connection to the community and the community's buy-in to what we are doing. Even when we went and chose the youths, we went to the different counties that they are in that state and chose them specifically from those places to bring them out to be trained. They go back to their communities, as Magdalena has, and trains other youths from the PMs or the smaller villages, and then they form another council there, and they're funded to be able to create businesses in their community to help their communities grow and prosper. So that's kind of part of it. There's usually a community learning center that's been constructed by the organization as a hub for them to be able to work from. But on a whole, they've been trained to be leaders. Like, she's been trained to be a leader and to choose and to see what she sees as the problems in her community, and to be able to act on them herself, to be able to pull together the tools that are necessary to do so. We're just partners in the movement with them. We're just one of the partners.
Thank you. Could you say a little bit about the methodology that you're using, the components of how you're helping young people develop their skills and their ability to play a role like what Magdalena is doing?
Well, they'll be trained in conflict resolution. They'll be going through a process of understanding the different ways of mediation. They will go through mock mediations. They will then go out into the community as well to teach the community under supervision at first while they're training, and then on their own to apply those skills in a life situation. With ICT, all of our youths receive a computer and a phone. It's always been a very important part of the network. It's called the Youth Peacemaker Network. And they learn how to utilize those tools to be able to amplify their voices, to be able to connect to other parts of the world, to connect to each other. So they'll be doing demonstrations, showing things on those computers and creating their templates for their businesses. They'll start to create spreadsheets for their businesses, proposals for the businesses that they would like to do for their community, and that's a part of it too. So that would be that third part. And then there's another part that's really important. And I know Magdalena has done it with me. She's done it on her own, the meditation in the different areas of what we consider life skills or trauma work. And that's a big part as well of the program. It's one of the tenets of it as well, to be able to deal with all the different conflicts and problems that are going along. And then they're supported for those 5 years with our team of people. If they need us, they come, or we come and work with them to figure out a strategy for what they're going to do in the field, and they work with them. She's working on a project right now, and a few, I think, and she's done a number of them. So we continue that support and continue to aid in the introduction of them into communities or to leaders or whatever is necessary to be able to deal with conflict resolution.
Fantastic. I could say, from Interpeace's 25 years of doing this work, that the way that the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative is proceeding is very much in line with all the lessons that we've learned. We've recognized that much of the world thinks that to tackle the youth engagement problem, as they frame it, you got to give young people a job, but that's not sufficient. It's important, but not sufficient. You have to work on civic engagement, the ability of young people to participate in their communities and be recognized for doing so. You got to help them develop the life skills that are needed to be able to manage their own emotions, to be able to listen, to be able to engage others in problem solving. These are the key ingredients when combined, as the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative is doing in a place like South Sudan and elsewhere, that we've found to be the most effective way of proceeding. The other aspect I just want to underscore is the crucial element of making sure you have community buy-in. We are seeing right now many agencies here in Geneva are struggling with the Ebola response right now in Eastern Congo, where the communities are actually revolting against the assistance, in part because they haven't felt that they were part of the process. They didn't have that sense of ownership. So the way that you're proceeding from the get-go we can only salute you. I think that's absolutely the way to go. Magdalena, tell us a little bit about one of the peace processes that you've been involved with or spearheaded in your communities.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to, we have done so many. Let me say,
just choose one. Yeah.
Let me choose one. I'll choose the one with the two communities, where we actually going to work on it soon. We had a conflict between the Logir and the Didinga. These are two neighboring counties. The youth are doing what they call cattle raiding. It's like tick for tack. It's like a game. You go, you steal the other one's cattle, you come back, you steal the other one's cattle. So it happened in September on the 21st, when the Logir went and stole the cows of Didinga. And later on, the Didinga also came and stole the cows of Logir on the 22nd. So this is still a burning issue at the ground. We got the information. We had to go for an assessment for it, and we did what we call premediation, whereby we needed to really find out with the two different groups of what exactly happened, because we really needed to know the real story from the people that are affected. And when there is cattle raiding, there are a lot of things involved. There is death. Some people will lose their husbands because it is men who participate in that. And then sometimes when they're going for this activity, maybe if they meet the other group from the other side, maybe like women who are who have gone for firewood, sometimes they kill these women. So such kind of issues, that's what we have been doing. To find out the real information, we went to the Logir. We had a pre-mediation with them for 2 days. We went to Didinga. We had a pre-mediation with them for 2 days. And it is still a process because it's not just something simple. It's something very technical, which does not only require me. And whenever we are doing such kind of mediation processes, it doesn't only involve the Waiteka Peace and Development Initiative. You need to work with the authority at the state level, meaning that the governors have to be informed, the commissioner needs to be informed, the minister of local government needs to be informed. So what Waiteka Peace and Development is doing is giving hand in contribution to facilitate the program, meaning that they have to give some funding so that the process can take place. Because when I'm talking about this, it's not just something like within a room like this. We are going to the bush, in the forest, in the mountainous areas. So you can imagine yourself being in such kind of a place. How do you feel? So we work hand in hand with the organization and with the governor, with the state authority, in order to make sure that the two groups will at least come to peace, and maybe those who lost their cattle should be at least, compensation should be done. So we are still aiming hard on that. And as I'm going back to the country, I think I'm going to prepare the ground for the people that will be coming from this side in order to go and witness of what is going to take place. So such kind of things are needed in order, because when we don't make sure that there is peace in such kind of communities, then services will not reach such kind of communities. Education will be a problem. Health service will be a problem. Safe water will be a problem. Gender-based violence, killing of women and children will be continuous. So when there is peace, I believe many people will be able to fund and create projects that will help such kind of communities. And all this need effort, need hands to join together in order to make sure that the country will get better services when there is peace. So what I'm wishing is that we have to join hands together for peace and development in the country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One thing that we know is that peacemakers are often in danger themselves because they are a danger to those who need to operate in a state of chaos, who benefit from chaos, and many do. There's a saying in the peace-building world that when you're a peace builder, when you're working in the middle, you're living on the edge because all sides want you to be on their side. And if you're not on their side fully, you're somehow perhaps a threat. So Magdalena, how do you're taking a lot of risks in this work. You know you're taking a lot of risks. How do you mitigate those risks? How do you reduce them? How do you guarantee your own safety when you go to these communities that are fighting each other? You know, how are they going to listen to you? And how do you make sure that you don't put yourself in danger?
In the community, what we do is that we have to use influential people, meaning that people who are recognized, like the chiefs, the commissioner, and the state authority, like the government, they need to know what is taking place because you can't enter somebody's home without information. So, and we need to get realistic information to find out exactly what is going on. And with the help of the organization, they are doing the part of contribution. So they help us in funding whereby we are able to reach the real people who are affected. And then in the side of government, they can help us in terms of security. Then we continue, and what the kind of people that we meet needs flexibility. What I mean is that you need to lower your level to the lifestyle that they are living in order for you to fit in. And in order for you to work well with these people, you really need to cooperate with them. And you cannot enforce them on what to do, but you ask them, how can we help you? What do you want us to do? So that is what I can say about it.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, it reminds me of just, again, why peace building can only really be done by the people of that society. Because Forrest and I, being outsiders, could never come into your communities and have any credibility whatsoever to be able to get the different groups to work together. It takes someone from the community who can play that role. But it's also a question of timing. As Magdalena just explained, you can't rush these things. It has to go at the pace that the community is ready to go. And very often the outside world has project documents with time frames in them and budgets that are bound by time and pressures that create the need to take action that might be en décalage, that might be out of whack with what the local community actually requires or needs. And it reminds me of our former chairman at Interpeace, President Marti Ahtisaari, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2008, who had worked a long time in the UN system, would often say that in the UN, when there's a discrepancy between the plan and reality, the plan shall prevail. And that's exactly what you don't want. What you want is to adapt what you're doing to the society, to its pace, because ultimately they need to be driving the effort, don't they? Forrest, in much of the work that the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative is doing with young people and helping to empower youth leadership and peace, you're confronted a lot, like Magdalena, with young people who have taken the road of violence too, who have joined groups, gangs, or young soldiers, etc. What do you think draws young people towards violence, towards a life of violence? What are those things that are pull and push factors, as you've seen in your work?
There are differing factors, but certainly there's like a particular character of like someone who's been disenfranchised and marginalized, who's not a part of a group, who not just idle, but possibly doesn't have any way to have a livelihood. So you contrast that with that person joining a group where they are become, in a way, a part of a family. They have status. They have a place to know what they stand for. They have their own moral code. They have food, water, whatever benefits come from that. That attraction is great for someone who in some respects feels like they have nothing. Feels like they have no way of even expressing their own identity. The other group, the second group, where you have the gun, where you have the family, where you have all that, you have an identity. You know you're a soldier. You know you're a certain thing. And loss of identity and disenfranchisement, marginalization, really push people or make them open to join that other group. You know, in a lot of places in the gangs of LA or as a child soldier, dependent, you know, on what's offered to them. And the only solutions are that you can hopefully find a middle space where you can make an offer, or there can be something that is an alternative to that gives them those things of needing to belong. Belongingness is a very important thing, you know. And I think when you can offer that in some way, whether it be that someone becomes a peacemaker and that becomes a part of their identity and their strength and the group of the network that they're in, then you have something, you know. And that's part of it.
Young people are looking for dignity, aren't they? They're looking for an identity, social ascension, the ability to participate, and these groups do offer them that opportunity, don't they? And often they offer them also a second chance. If they've had a life of where they haven't been able to achieve their hopes, sometimes they think that this is an alternative, a second chance at that. Magdalena, one of the things that we've seen in work that empowers young people to play more of a leadership role and to participate more in the community, gives them greater education, skills, is that, and I'm thinking in particular one of the countries we're working in, Mali, is that it actually disrupts some of the traditional relationships between elders and youth. Because where that relationship has been very clear for hundreds of years, all of a sudden technology, awareness, education, the willingness to participate, the demand to participate, is challenging traditional decision-making in the village level and elsewhere. Have you seen that in your work in South Sudan? How young people, as they get more engaged, as they get more, how the elders are reacting to that? And do you have a solution to how to manage that tension?
Actually, what I've seen is that, I don't know whether they call it Western culture. That's what they say in Africa, and especially in South Sudan, you know, when it comes to the youth, as in, when they reach the age of adolescent, 12 to 19 years, you know, with such kind of age, the youth or the adolescent they're eager to know more in life. So, and whatever they're doing is that they do with a lot of energy, thinking that maybe they are doing the right thing. They want to discover what is happening in their lives, what they are doing. Maybe they will start drinking alcohol, they start smoking, taking drugs, joining their peers. And it doesn't mean that all the kind of groups that you join are positive groups. Others can ruin your life forever. Meaning that with such kind of life, what is going on is that elders even have failed to control. Elders have failed to control such kind of children. You find at night, even children, the youth or the adolescent are escaping out of home. They feel they're already big enough to take care of their own responsibilities. To me, this has affected, actually, most of this kind of condition has affected mostly the conflict zone areas because they feel traumatized. They've lost their dignity. So they engage in activities which they're not supposed to do, like being criminals, doing drug abuse, prostitution, and all this endanger the life of the youth. And you find sometimes is that with prostitution, maybe she needs money to take care of their family and all that, but it's not good. It's not something which is right. I believe that if we mentor the young youth.
Hold the mic closer to your mouth. Yeah? What? Can you just put the microphone closer to your mouth?
Okay, sorry. What I'm meaning is that this youth here, they need to be mentored, trained, so that, and they need to be engaged. If it is in religion, it's good. If it is in mentoring them in activities that cannot make their minds be idle, in activities that can make them be self-reliant. So I think that is it. And they always say life is what you make it. Life is what you make. So sometimes we also need to be serious as the youth. We need to be serious for our own selves. How do you choose your life to be for tomorrow? What kind of a parent do you want to be tomorrow? What kind of a leader do you want to be tomorrow? What can you contribute to your community? What service can you deliver to your family? You are not raised to come and beat your parents. You're not raised to come and be a problem to your own family or to your own community. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves such kind of questions. I think that's what I can say.
Thank you, Magdalena. Are there particular challenges to being a young woman in a very male-dominated society, in male-dominated communities? Is it an advantage as a peacemaker, or is it an extra challenge in your experience?
For me, it is an extra challenge because when I reach a certain the community that I went to, it's called Mohina, that's in Logir. It's quite a mountainous area. People are asking themselves, what is this young lady coming to do here? What is she coming to tell us? Anyway, let us sit and listen to what she wants to say. So it's quite challenging because some cultures, when men are making a meeting, there is what we call, I don't know, we call it amangat, or in our tradition, there's a place meant only for men to speak. This is a place for meetings. So women, you don't go there. You only need to push water and maybe food to that place. Then you go and sit aside. Then you listen from that side very far. You cannot talk. You have no right to talk. So to me, it's a big challenge. It's a challenge, but I need to persevere it. So sometimes I tell them that when we went to that area and I was like, let the women come closer to listen. I said, no, you want to destroy our culture. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah. So being a woman sometimes is so challenging, even in decision-making for your own self. It's a problem because maybe a lot of dowry have been paid and your family have benefited out of that. So sometimes you become even a slave in your own marriage. So it's a challenge.
Fantastic. One of the things that we've seen in our work is that often in the most male-dominated societies, the most macho communities, actually women are the most effective peace builders. And the reason for that, in my empirical experience, is that women are just more capable of checking their ego at the door.
I mean,
this patriarchal society, I mean, Magdalena has done extraordinary things. I mean, she's negotiated with gangs, she's negotiated with cattle youth, she's trained ministers or commissioners in conflict resolution who are like older gentlemen, you know, which just looking at the photograph, when I first saw the photograph, I was just like, oh my God, so powerful. You know, amazing. Knowing the culture and understanding what she had to do in order to be able to do that, and she's been doing it well.
Fantastic. Forrest, the challenges that you're working on in South Sudan, that we're working on in other countries, these are actually universal challenges. The issue of marginalization of youth that you were describing, the inability of societies to manage their conflicts without the use of violence, polarization. We know that in Europe, we're facing challenges that we haven't faced in many years. In the US, we're facing these challenges again in new ways. Do you see that universality in the type of efforts that you're doing? Do you see a red thread throughout it all in terms of what we need to be focusing on if we're going to make a more peaceful world?
I definitely see a commonality of people who feel they have, or who are not heard, who are being disenfranchised to the point where what their voice means doesn't matter. Those who are in fear that they're going to lose their livelihood. When you put those together with a sense of needing some form of identity to be able to feel like you belong, you create a lot of the problems that are occurring all over, I believe all over the world. They're universal issues that we're all kind of deal with. You don't know what you stand for, who you are, because you feel society has done that. You don't have food, you don't have the proper way to take care of yourselves in the society structure that you have, you know. You don't feel like you belong to any group. Then you reach out. Then you fight. Then you protest. Then you do things that seem completely wrong. You make choices that are exclusionary. You make choices that are racist. You make choices that are totally selfish, you know, to your own group, just because you want to empower your own group in some way. And that's happening everywhere. You know, it's certainly happening in the U.S., and I see it happening in the countries I'm in Africa, and I see it here, you know, in Europe.
And can you tell us a little bit about, given your very special experience in the use of film to try to communicate with people, to connect with people, what's your view on the role that cinema and these media can play in helping people to understand the challenges and what they can do to build a more peaceful world? What's the power of cinema for this?
I mean, obviously, it takes things from the abstract or from the intellectual and academic into an emotional place. It also reveals a story. You get to take a journey and see that story unveil and understand the struggles and difficulties that are going in it. It's happening a lot, you know, now with documentaries like, you know, like Peace Warriors or other ones, you know, where you get a chance to glimpse into the reality and live it as your own for a moment, and then hopefully decide that it's not away from you. Hopefully film can make us more empathetic, so we see that we can stand in each other's shoes and we walk in the same walk in different spaces and different times, but by him it could be me, you know? And I think film does that. It reveals things in a very powerful, powerful way. And my company, you know, I have a film company, and we do films. The Prouville station was dealing with the police who killed an individual in the subway system, and we deal with projects that have to do with social activism issues that are going on, so people can create a dialogue around them, and from that dialogue, hopefully, make decisions to help change or bring the situation to a better place.
Very often we have, our entertainment industry is more focused on CGI, big explosions, about either fantasies and myths about superhero type roles, or try to entertain through violence, yeah? And there isn't enough that is both entertaining and therefore reaches a large audience and sends the right message. How do you find that right balance between being able to do treat a subject as complex as building peace, for example, and reaching enough people so that it has enough of an impact?
I mean, I think some of those gaps are being bridged a little bit through being able to access audiences through social media in a way that was different. I think you have to look at the project and look at, you can see the potentiality of it, but also look at how you can be able to tell that story in the most financial, the best way financially. We've tended to do lower budget films. And those films have all been received, they've all been discussed, and they've all been successful financially, and they've all been successful critically. So we've been very fortunate in that way. At Significant, my production company.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to turn to the audience in just a second, so I'd ask you to already prepare questions you might have, and we'll pass it. There are some colleagues who are going to pass the mic around. But before we do, perhaps I can ask both of you, Magdalena and Forrest, what do you think people living here should do in their own lives to mimic some of these approaches that you're applying in your own work? What should they take home and do in their families, in their schools, in their communities to help to build a more peaceful world?
I think, to me, let us not have that negative idea or negative thinking that South Sudan will never have peace. South Sudan will never be like any other country. I believe even USA was in the World War. There was First World War. There was Second World War. There are countries that have been in war. But what about the young generation that are coming up? What do we do to them? So if there is a way of doing contribution and funding, I think we need to do the funding and use the funds in a realistic manner. What I mean is that when some projects are created, the money or the funds that have been given should be channeled in the right way. Sometimes some organizations are given a lot of money to go and do work in Africa, but they don't do the right work. They even don't reach the location because they know how to do the editing, they know how to write the reports, send some pictures, and they say, oh God, we did this and this. The donors who are funding health, education, technology, water, the basic services, the humanitarian services in South Sudan, please try to find out, is the funding that you're giving to the country channeled in the right manner? Are they building the schools? Are they mentoring this youth? This is the question. It's not just a matter of pouring in money and you don't know how it has been used. And I believe South Sudan, South Sudan have been given a lot of money, but we don't know how this money is being used. So that is not my question, and that's not the reason why I'm here. But my reason is that let the services reach the grassroots. Let the services empower the youth. Let the services mentor them so that they can be self-reliant. South Sudan is a very rich country. We have gold, we have cement, we have tourist places where people can tour, we have oil. So, but how can we generate more income, or how can we use the resources in a right way to develop the country and to develop the nation. I think that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think your message is very well received. I think it's an important message. You know, one of the things that might actually give South Sudan a little bit more of a chance at the moment is that the world is actually pouring less money in at the moment because several years ago we were putting so much money into South Sudan that it was distorting the incentives for many of the actors there to capture some of those resources. So by bringing less money in to what is already a very rich country in natural resource terms, it might actually help to reduce those incentives, those negative incentives. But I think your point, follow the money, make sure it goes to the people concerned, and make sure that it actually improves their day-to-day lives is a very, very important message. Thank you. Forrest, these values are, as we said, universal. You have an audience here of people who are from all over Europe, all over the world. It's a very diverse group here. What are some of the lessons and messages that you would share with them about how they can take this into their own lives?
I think what Magdalena was saying was very right on point. Certainly is to recognize that you can make a difference and that you can help move things forward. I think when you were talking initially, it sounded like you were looking for anecdotes of how you can utilize those systems in your own life. Was that what you were asking me?
Yeah, I mean, we have problems of exclusion here. We have problems of bullying in schools. We have these are very relevant problems for the kinds of values that we're promoting and the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative is promoting.
I think the concept of being able to see yourself in the other that stands in front of you is really important. I think to have empathy is really important, and to work on empathetic behavior allows you a great deal. I think the capacity to listen and to hear is very important. And then the capacity to be willing to compromise is really important. And I think the capacity to allow yourself to continue to form even. Yes, you stand for something, but perhaps, just perhaps, you might want to redefine even more sharply what it is you believe you believe. And give yourself room to see that. Give yourself room that when you look into someone else's eyes and you see yourself and you see the things that they're saying and you understand that it affects you, give yourself the ability to be able to say, okay, I guess I do see this point. That's a new part of you. And to understand that new part of you expands you, makes you larger, makes you greater. And I think that would be simple anecdotes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. We have one hand up here and another there. We're going to take 2, 3, possibly 4 questions at a time, and we'll turn back to the panel and come back to the audience, okay? So, gentleman with the hat. And if you can just be very brief, formulate a question, and say who you are.
It's always difficult to be brief with such kind of subject. My name is Philippe Lionjo.
I know you will succeed.
My name is Philippe Lionjo, but you can call me MC Spider. That's my artistical name. I'm an actor here in Switzerland. I'm original from Congo, DRC, and you know that DRC has a lot of problems. My first word will be to Magdalena. I come from a country with a man named Dr. Denis Mukwege, Nobel Peace Prize, and I would like to tell you that you are at the same level as Dr. Mukwege for what you're doing. My question will go to Forrest Whitaker. You've been doing a lot of movies with strong messages. Zulu was one of it, The Ghost Dog, Bird, of course. And I would like to know, what is your view with African cinema, doing films with strong messages to educate and to help peace building. Thank you.
Thank you, MC Spider. We had a lady there with her hand up there. Yes.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Antonia Edikem, chaplain Yahu. I'm actually from Ghana, and I just came back from Ghana. And listening to what Magdalena had to say was kind of a reminder that you can't really take what you have for granted. Because coming back from Ghana and her narrative, totally different stories. And I'm looking and I'm listening and I'm thinking, wow, you're an amazing person. And my question to you is, on the African continent, have you started to build links with other youths? Because Ghana is pretty stable, so I don't know in terms of your programs. Because, you know, to look abroad and see that, oh, things are okay all the way in Switzerland, it's nice, but what about having something positive, like a positive image coming from other African countries? And also the other question to you, Magdalena, is where do you see yourself 10 to 20 years from now? And for Mr. Whitaker, in terms of your organization and what you foresee for the future, where do you see your organization 30 to 50 years from now? Should it still exist, or would you hope that it will be transformed to something else with the hope that we would not have these type of issues on the continent anymore? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had a lady here in front. Oui, on vous voit, on vous voit. On vous voit.
So we can see you. Yes, we can see you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharika. I'm from Qatar. I'm a human rights and transitional justice student here in Geneva. And my question is to you, Magdalena. How do you address structural inequality problems in comparison to immediate needs? So when you're trying to produce development programs. So, thank you.
Thank you. One last question from the gentleman, the enthusiastic gentleman over there.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Je m'appelle Gorkindoy.
I'm Gorkindoy. I'm a journalist from Senegal, and I'm accredited at the UN, and I'm representing the son of Dakar. My question is addressed to Mr. Whitaker, and second to our beautiful representative of South Sudan. My question to Mr. Whitaker, for the referendum in Sudan, I, as a journalist, saw one of your colleagues, an artist, an American artist, I don't remember his name. George Clooney. He came to make a lot of acting on the international level so that the South Sudan becomes independent. We know that after the independence, a huge conflict erupted, and all the international organizations describe an inhuman situation, and there is no help. Can you tell Mr. George Clooney, since he fought, so-called, for the independence of South Sudan, couldn't he also come, as you do, and help this country to have another image and to help the country as much as he can? I hope you have heard my question. The lady, you have been asking for independence. You have a fantastic family. Hunger is very strong in Sudan, but the United Nations turns a blind eye on that. So what you as Sudanese with Khartoum, don't you think that you can now, when US is a big entity and Europe is a big entity, don't you think that in unity, in integration, that the African can help themselves? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. So we have a number of questions. The first one, perhaps, Forrest, if you can say, what's the vision for the initiative, the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, on 30 to 50 years from now?
I mean, the organization will continue to exist. It was always intended to be a network. It's called the Youth Peacemaker Network of peacemakers who are community builders. So in effect, it's a development org if you really look at it. part of development may be that we have to work through some of the issues of the conflict, working with the people for soft skills so that they can take over their nation and build the type of nation that they want, But ultimately, that building moves into development, to businesses, to schools, to education, and we're involved in all those areas of working with the community and people. We're with the ministry in Uganda and South Sudan in their education, so we train people in schools. Our youths are all trained to be able to teach in school. So it's a part of building the soft infrastructure of that of the nation. That we'll continue to do. Hopefully we won't be dealing with the same conflicts 50 years from now that we are dealing with today. Certainly historically there's conflicts have always existed, So, but we won't be dealing with the same ones, hopefully, and some of them will be solved and we'll move forward. And if the human race evolves, then maybe we won't be dealing with the conflicts at all.
But one of the most productive ways of investing in a society is to invest in youth and their capacities, because you're, in essence, investing in the future leadership of the society. So when all else is frustrating, investing in young people is a very productive way of ensuring that the country has a better chance at achieving its SDGs, at achieving its future. Magdalena, where do you see yourself in 10 to 20 years?
In 10 to 20 years, to me, is that I cannot judge about the future, but I just feel that my role is to do the service to the people. That is why I'm in this world. So I'm to offer service. If God still needs me to be in this world, I'll do more than that. I want to see that South Sudan is a better place for tomorrow. I want to see there is freedom, there is development, there's good structures. At least I want to feel it. It's not for my pride, but it's for the people, for the people's benefit. That's what I feel.
Thank you. The fact is, people build peace. Governments don't build peace. And so it's people like you who are going to make the difference. We had a question about structural inequalities in society, and how do you deal with the fact that the way that society is organized is unequal, it creates some of these frustrations and discrepancies and senses of exclusion in society, and how can this type of work actually address the structural problems of a place like South Sudan?
When we talk about the structures, do we mean at the government level? Do we talk at the community level? Do we talk at the organizational level?
Things also like what is a curse in many countries, and South Sudan's the same, is a winner-take-all mentality to power, resources, right? These create a lot of those structural inequalities that we talk about.
So South Sudan has a constitution, but our problem is that sometimes we don't follow what is in the constitution. I think that's the real thing that's taking place. Some articles maybe are followed and others are not followed. I'm not a lawyer by profession, but I believe the vulnerable people are victimized, and they're facing a lot of challenges if it comes to the structural, as in when you're having a problem maybe and you're trying to go to court to solve it. It requires a lot of processes. You need a lawyer to help you, and such kind of people are not there, but they might need money to be hired for such kind of services in order for you to fight for your right. And some rights are not even, culture is also the one affecting the rights of human rights. It has been mostly affected by the culture, as in what people believe in different cultures. Like my culture is different from another different community. So when you try to bring in the issue of law, justice, it's a big, quite challenge, but I think they need more to be educated, and they need to be told on what human rights are and what is inside the Constitution, so that we respect and everyone is at least under the law or above. No one is above the law. So sometimes we don't need to take the position to use it in a negative way, whereby it's a frustration to those who are vulnerable in the community. I think that's what I can say about that.
Thank you. I think one of the things is Mr. Clooney is not here today, so we're not going to ask him about his commitment to the situations. I think one of the things I admire so much about Forrest and the way that you approach the work that you're doing is that you're using your great celebrity and credibility to advance the cause rather than have a cause try to advance your celebrity. And I think there's an amazing humility in the way that you've approached the way that you work in the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative. I just want to salute that. And I think everyone here can salute that too. We had a question from our friend from Ghana about, from the gentleman with the hat from Congo, about Africa cinema and how that can further develop, how that can become an engine of progress on the continent. Do you have any thoughts on that, Forrest?
I think that these stories in the films, or the stories that could be told out of the continent itself, would be really powerful and really influential to understanding of the culture and the people and the life. They already are doing a lot of films in Nigeria, obviously, with Hollywood, and clearly in South Africa, but hopefully there's so many stories across that continent that hopefully in the future more filmmakers will be telling them, and more filmmakers will be bringing those stories to arenas like this and others, so that we can all connect to those messages, you know?
Thank you. Let's take another round of questions. We have a gentleman here and then a fellow at the back with the glasses. Is there a mic? Or you can speak very loudly if you like. What's your name? Andre. Voilà.
It's a question to Mr. Whitaker. Knowing that the peace is something hypothetical and it's very hard to reach in modern times, you play also in a crying game. There was a peace agreement in Northern Ireland, and it is the one of very rare conflict and the war who finished with a peace agreement. What brings you idea to bring this personal initiative to the world to work on this field? And also, as you are by the appearance positive person, do you have any disappointments by the reactions of the locals or the international community? That means the actors in this situation that you are confronted with.
Thank you. There's a fellow at the back who has his hand up.
Yeah, my name is Ivan, and I'm from Sweden, but I spent some years in South Sudan working, and I actually met the love of my life in Bentiu. That's a parenthesis, but my question is, Magdalena, you were talking about when elephants fight, the grass suffers, and I find that to be very much true. But from a peace-building perspective, how can we work with youth community engagement and kind of link it to the broader peace process? because I feel that at many times whatever goes on a higher level might seem to be very far from the reality of people living in camps and in urban displacement. So how can we work to kind of link those approaches?
Great, and there's a lady there standing up.
There was another lady standing up, so I just wanted to make sure if it was me or the other lady.
I can't see, there's a light behind you, so.
Okay. Well,
why don't you both take the floor? Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Arzu. I'm from Azerbaijan. I'm a journalist. Thank you for an amazing panel, very inspiring. My question is to Magdalena. It's about one of the questions that you actually ask in the film, and that's what you want in the future when the people come to the camp. So my question is, what is the common answer that you get from the participants, and whether there is a follow-up to people who come to these camps, whether you know what they go on to do in the communities, what kind of work that they carry out. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's another lady next to you, you said? Yeah?
So, good afternoon. My name is Audrey, and I work in the field of child protection in emergency, and actually I was in South Sudan in 2012, where the country was pretty new and where we had a lot of hope of what about South Sudan could become. And my question is for you, Magdalena. You were talking a lot about gender-based violence as challenges, and I would like to ask whether child protection concerns youth have experienced, such as child soldier, unaccompanied and spirited children, abducted children, and so on. Does this has an impact in a way or another in the activity of peace building you are doing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to jump in on a couple things before I turn to the panel. One is that you mentioned Northern Ireland, gentlemen, Andre, yeah? Northern Ireland is seeing a rise of paramilitary activity again, no? And that was before Brexit. So the basic lesson is that we just celebrated 20 years since the peace accord, and the chair of Interpeace's board was one of the only women signatories to the peace agreement, Monica McWilliams. And she's the first one to say, peace is never over. The effort to build peace is not ephemeral. It's not, what's the word you used, abstract. It's very, very real. Trust is very, very real. You can't taste it, you can't buy it, you can't weigh it, but if it isn't there, you know it. And in a place like Northern Ireland, it's been a challenge. It's more polarized today than at the height of the Troubles. And now you have Brexit that comes in like a bull in a china shop. So the effort to build peace, South Sudan, Europe's been trying to do that for 70 years, and look where it is right now. It's never over. The other thing I wanted to say to the gentleman at the back, who found his love in South Sudan, is that part of the problem has been how we, the outside world, have structured the peace process itself. We have reinforced some of these dynamics of actually recognizing and giving too much importance and emphasis to two leaders instead of how much they are actually connected in a social contract to their people. So we need to rethink how we go about peace processes in the future. Somalia, where we've worked a lot, had 16 previous attempts at a peace process. All failed. It was the 17th that worked when it was brought back into Somalia. So part of the problem is how we actually make the challenge of building peace more difficult because of the arrogance of our impatience and our need to work with certain leaders and not others, and not understanding the link to the people and how to engage them. So it's not all on the people of these societies. We have a role to play in making that more effective. Forrest, can you say a word about to the gentleman about why you started to do this work in the first place?
In the South Sudan,
no,
in general?
I think in general.
If I want to go generally, I think that as a child, as an 8-year-old kid, I was walking down the street one day, and this 15-year-old kid just started to beat me up. I didn't know him. I'd done nothing. I never saw him again in my life. I was laying on the sidewalk and staring up at the sky, thinking, why? Why? What'd I do? Why? So then I try to understand this, and I watch my cousin. He goes off to Vietnam. He comes back from Vietnam. He's a totally different person. Now he's drinking. Now he's lost. He was like really close to me. He's like my brother. So I'm thinking, why? The gangs in my neighborhood were forming. I didn't understand it. I had to leave my schools because of it. And I asked myself, why? What did I do? What's going on? Why are they like this? They killed the Black Panther Party. They used to pick me up every day on the corner, on the street, pick me up in the air, speak to me by name, treat me really good, and then one day I walk by their office and it's destroyed, and they're dead. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Why is this all going on? So I figured out I was going to try to figure out why, and if I could figure out how to make it not happen to other people. So I ended up working with gangs, his mentor. Then I end up, by chance, over in Uganda. And I meet child soldiers for the first time, and I see in the child soldiers' eyes the same look that I saw in the kids that I knew that were gang members. And, okay, we're all experiencing this. How do we fix this? What can I do? Is there something I could do? Is there some kind of way I could change it? So I decided to start working in peace. I started working with a guy named Sam Okello in North Uganda, a place called Hope North. And then I decided I need to go even deeper. I started working with the UN. Then I wanted to be more on the ground. And I had this idea of a methodology. At the time, everybody was acting like it was kind of crazy to work on these things I was doing. And we started, and we trained the first group in Uganda, the first group, and then we went to the second group, which is in the South Sudan, which is in Jonglei State, before the war began. We went there in 2012, we trained these youths, and the war broke, 2013. So then, what do? My youths, they're scattered, they're all over the place. I'm still trying to understand, and I say, okay, we're going to stay stronger. And those kids, those youths, like start helping each other to safety, calling each other on phones, telling tribes to move here and there. And at that point, everybody's pulling out almost. A lot of the NGOs are pulling out. And I thought, is this what I want to do? Can I help? Can I do something? And I decided to go in deeper. And that's where I've been. And that's what it is.
Magdalena, you heard several of the questions were about children or how you link up with other youth from other countries. And I assume within the context of the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, you've met young peace builders from other places too, yeah? And what do you find you have in common? What are you learning from each other?
Actually, we went to Uganda in 2017. We were there in Uganda, in Hope North. We were with the TOTs in Uganda.
Training of trainers.
Training of trainers. So they never knew much about peace building. And in our side, we never knew much about business. So we had a training, we shared ideas, and it was really so good to meet with different people. That happened in Uganda. We also went to Yambio to launch the project, and we from Eastern Equatorial were like an example to the rest, to tell them exactly what it means to be a peacemaker. So we are now very many TOTs around Equatorial region of South Sudan, and we hope that the organization will cover the whole of South Sudan in future. As long as funding is there, I believe they will be in Barkazal, they will be in Jongole, They say one by one makes a bundle, right? So we hope that WPDI will cover the whole country and it will be something genius.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the organizers are telling me that we have to wrap up. I know we could go on all afternoon. I certainly could. What I want to ask our two friends is to leave us with a last thought. What's a message you want the world to hear as you go back to South Sudan? Forrest, as you go back to the US? You're actually on your way to South Sudan now, but when you go back to the US, what's the message you want to leave this crowd with?
My message is that peace building and development is something that has to go hand in hand. Without peace, no development. And when there is violence, there is no peace, there is no development. So all this need a collective effort. It needs a collective effort to fight violence and conflict. And when we fight conflict and violence, that means we shall have development. Meaning that there will be good security, there will be freedom, there will be communication, there will be good health, there will be good education, and there will be free movement. So all this needs a joint effort from any charitable organization, from any international organization, from any NGO in any other country. It is time for us to come up and join our hands together to enable that peace at least avails not only in South Sudan, but in most conflict-affected areas and in developing countries. All these youth need to be mentored because they're still energetic. And if we use them in a negative way, maybe we are going to train them on how to use the weapons, how to make bombs. That one is also another way of developing, which is negative. It does not help the country. So we really need to channel our funding and our knowledge in a positive manner in order for the country and other countries to develop too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Forrest.
I'd just like to ask everyone here you have individual influence, some of you have larger, some of you have smaller, but you have your sphere, that you support peace building and development with programs of youth. Not necessarily WPDI, whatever one that you can connect to, that you would support those individuals who are creating initiatives so that allow the youth to be able to help move us forward in the area of peace and development. In your own lives, those you can call, those you can touch, every time you have the opportunity, support it because it is our future. They will be the ones that design it for us. And as Magdalena said, it's on one side or the other. And you have the ability to help be the tipping point to make it be on the positive side of peace and development.
I need to bring this to a close, but I want to say a huge word of thanks to Magdalena and Forrest for being with us today. As you may understand now, those of us who work in peace building, if we are optimists, it's because we're realists, because we get to work with people like Magdalena, who we see are doing amazing things every day outside of the public eye. It's not necessarily covered in the press, but we see this type of extraordinary contribution every day. And that gives us hope, but realistic hope for the future. So thank you very much. If you want to show your appreciation, please do now. Thank you for coming.